Good evening, I am Yann Lemerdy, Deputy Cultural Attaché at Villa Albertine, the cultural service of the French Embassy in the US, and I'm delighted to welcome you tonight, live from the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia, to this new episode of Museum Talks, our online talks of series dedicated to French art in American museums. Tonight, we are honored to host Dr. Cindy Kang, curator at the Barnes Foundation, for a discussion on the exhibition Matisse and Renoir, New Encounters, with our great moderator, Faya Causey. Faya is a lecturer, scholar, and educator with interests ranging from the Paleolithic to the present. She earned her PhD from UC Santa Barbara and began her career as a professor of art history in California. She recently retired as head of academic programs at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, DC. Although her primary field is ancient art and her best-known books are on amber, her first publications were on the Impressionist Pissarro and Caillebotte. Her most recent work is on Michelangelo, and even most recently on Paul Cézanne. Recently, she was elected as Fellow of the Society of Antiquaries of London, and recently joined as well the Société Paul Cézanne. So Faya and Cindy, thank you so much for being part of this program tonight, and the floor is yours for what promises to be a very exciting museum talks.
Thank you, Jan. Hello. Tonight, here we are at the Barnes. And the Barnes, the extraordinary art collection. Okay, how about my microphone? All right. So here we are at the Barnes, the extraordinary art collection and educational institution promoting the appreciation of art and horticulture. As many of you know, the Barnes Foundation maintains and displays one of the world's leading collections of French Impressionist and Post-Impressionist paintings. And this evening, we will be immersed in the exhibition Matisse and Renoir, New Encounters at the Barnes, where are displayed 34 of the Barnes works in a display that reflects the expansion of their educational program, emphasizing the objects' art historical context. It's my pleasure to introduce Barnes Foundation curator Cindy Kang, who will guide us through this innovative show. Cindy, a specialist in modern European art, and particularly on painting and decorative arts in late 19th and early 20th century France. She's co-curator of the show. She's certainly been busy since she came to the Barnes in 2017. I'll just tell you a few of the things she's done. She co-curated Marie Laurencin, Sapphic Paris, that was 23-24. She curated a show featuring Marie Coutoli in 2020, and she was managing curator for Berthe Morisot Women Impressionist in 2018-19. That's not all. In 2022, she commissioned the exhibition Water, Wind, Breath, Southwest Native Art in Community. And she also led, or co-led, the Barnes Land Acknowledgement process. Cindy previously held curatorial and research positions at the Frick Collection, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art, and the Bard Graduate Center. She received her PhD from the Institute of Fine Arts, NYU, New York University. Our schedule tonight, Cindy will discuss the exhibition for about 25 minutes, maybe a little more, and then at about 15 minutes before the hour, that is, before 7, we will take questions from the audience. So if you have a question, please write your questions in the chat section, and we'll go through them and do as best we can with all of them. But before I turn the program over to Cindy, I really want to say how much you'll enjoy seeing the exhibition in person if you haven't already. The Barnes is open Thursday through Monday, and the exhibition is open through September 8th. And now, Cindy.
Thank you so much, Faya. I'm so pleased to welcome you virtually all to the Barnes. Thanks for signing on. I wanted today to walk you through the exhibition using the Barnes's virtual experience platform, which will allow us to zoom in very deeply on images of the works in the exhibition, as well as some of the installation shots of the exhibition. So you can get the feeling of being there, but of course, nothing beats coming in person. So I hope you will make it to Philadelphia. So I wanted to start you off with the introductory wall to the exhibition, where we encounter this show, which was actually very much about the pure pleasure of looking. What we've done here is take some of the most iconic works by Matisse and Renoir in our collection and reinstall them in a way that allows them to breathe. It gives a sense of freshness to these works so that you can see them anew. If you know the Barnes collection, this exhibition is like falling in love again. And if you are new to the Barnes collection, it will allow you to see works in a way that allows you to see the way Matisse and Renoir developed their motifs, their styles, their palettes over the course of their careers. It's been amazing to be able to reunite works from the same time period together in one room that are generally scattered across the Barnes. For those of you who don't know the Barnes very well, these works are generally installed in what are called ensembles, which mix works by different artists on wall. So here we tried to create a bit more of art historical and biographical context around these works. So in the first room, we take you into the world of Renoir. The first room really is an overview of Renoir's work and of all the different kinds of genres that he painted in, including landscape. This is one wall in the exhibition that allowed us to put 3 landscapes from 3 different periods of Renoir's career together. So you get a sense of the range of his style, from the very quickly handled, choppy, kind of impressionist brushwork that you see here. This is actually a work from 1888 called the Scène at Argenteuil, but it is from a summer when he was visiting Caillebotte. So he was returning at this point to the kind of impressionist work that he did in the mid-1870s, in this kind of later period in his career. But we move on to a work from the 1890s where you can see the softness of his brushwork, and yet at the same time a sense of very sculptural form. This is when Renoir had already gone to Italy. He was very much moving away from Impressionism and establishing his new style that was trying to give a greater sense of structure and form to that kind of fleeting nature of Impressionist brushwork. And lastly, on that wall is a late landscape, one of his last landscapes actually, from 1917. He painted it in Cagnes, at his home, Les Colettes. And here you can see this kind of classic late Renoir, warm red palette, these very warm tones, and the kind of molten brushwork here that gives you the sense of a hot Mediterranean afternoon. Moving on to the rest of the room, we wanted to give you a sense of Renoir's work across genres, as I said, portraiture, figure painting, even sculpture. So I love this kind of vignette that we were able to set up to show you the way he worked with similar motifs across media, so kind of maternal scenes in sculpture as well as painting. The sculpture does represent his wife Hélène with their infant daughter Pierre, so that is an actual maternal scene. The painting displayed with it is not of actual mother and child. That is Renoir's son Coco and his nursemaid Gabrielle. And I think what is also fun to be able to see in this room is that you see Gabrielle twice. So here she is again, the model in the dark hair in this work called Tea Time. Gabrielle was a favorite model of Renoir's at this time in his career. And these are the kinds of juxtapositions that we could do in this new hang. I wanted to give you a deeper dive into this portrait of Matisse Certes, just to kind of show off this VXP platform that we developed at the Barnes, where you really get to go deep into a painting and see the brushwork up close, even closer than you can in the galleries, actually. So I love this portrait. I think it's such a strong portrait. And Matthias's gaze is also very strong, right directly out at the visitor. And one of the ways that Renoir accomplishes this is that kind of dot, the dot of red. You wouldn't expect that, right? But the dots of red in the pupils that kind of give that strength to her gaze. You also see the way that Renoir uses the same palette in the flower in her hair, as well as in her cheeks and in her skin. So there's always this relationship in Renoir's late work, especially between flowers and female flesh. So that is one of the themes that we bring out here in the gallery. And I just have to linger on this little detail that I love, is that yellow brush stroke, that little glint of metal that really kind of focuses the picture and brings it all together. We move from the Renoir gallery into the next one that focuses on Matisse and Fauvism. And I just wanted to, again, give you a sense of walking through the exhibition. So the view through the door from the Renoir gallery is to the iconic Bonheur de Vivre by Matisse, which was really the anchor and the inspiration for this entire room. This room brings together all the Fauve works and kind of pre-World War I works that we have by Matisse from the second floor in the collection. The Bonheur de Vivre, of course, watershed painting in European modernism. This is really what established Matisse's international reputation as a leading avant-garde painter. It is one of the signature works at the Barnes and was one of the inspirations really for this installation, because we knew we had to have this on view in this installation. One thing I will flag is that if you visit the Barnes now, the second floor is closed. And so to make sure that the most iconic pictures were on view, we wanted to highlight them in this show. Since we have this deep zoom capability, one of the details that I love to show is the way that Matisse leaves some of the ground layer showing in this picture to create a sense of light. So he's using bare canvas essentially to express a sense of light, which is, I think, is ingenious on his part. This picture, just a behind-the-scenes detail, this picture determined the whole lighting scheme of this exhibition. It's very fragile. There are some pigments that are deteriorating in the picture, so it needs very low light levels. And when you start lighting, a star picture like this at a certain level, you have to bring the light levels down everywhere else so that it doesn't look like it's in the dark. So this picture really kind of dictated the show. One of the juxtapositions that was really excited to be able to do in this exhibition is to bring the Red Madras headdress together with a related composition. These two pictures have sat separately in different galleries for decades and decades. And so we were never really able to look at them together, even though they are, of course, the same model, Amélie Matisse, posing in the same costume, if you will, this house dress, and an Indian headscarf, or an Indian kind of textile that she has wrapped around her head. But let us look more closely at the Red Madras headdress. This is actually one of my favorite paintings in the collection. One detail I will point out is if you look at the lace trim of her house dress, you can see that there is a layer turquoise green underneath there. You really don't sense the turquoise green when you're zoomed out of the picture and just looking, at it as a whole. But that turquoise green underlayer really gives a brightness to the lace trim and I think allows it to pop. One fun detail is that on the back of this picture, we do have Matisse's thumbprint on the stretcher in turquoise green. One of the aspects of this picture that I think make it so powerful is how large Emilie Matisse's figure is, that she goes all the way to the edges of the canvas. There's only the barest bit of space there, but otherwise she is filling the canvas, and it is such an expansive canvas. It really feels as monumental as you can make it, meaning that the more space you give it, the bigger it grows. Another juxtaposition that was fabulous to be able to create in this gallery was putting these different still lifes together, views of Matisse's studio. This juxtaposition of these three pictures, which again do not sit together in our permanent collection galleries, really allows you to trace the way Matisse worked with still life objects over the course of 10 years. I'll just move here so that we can zoom in a little bit. I wanted to actually zoom in on this picture because I was also excited to hang this picture in the same room as the Red Madra's headdress, because if you can see, you might be able to see in here just underneath the red and the yellow, there is, if you can barely make it out, that squiggly line. The first idea for this composition actually had the Indian headscarf hanging in the background. And you can still see the traces of that, yellow meandering pattern in the background of this still life. In the finished painting, of course, Matisse decided to paint that out and just covered it and made it red and yellow rather than the red cloth with the yellow meandering pattern. Now, the next section of the exhibition ties together Matisse and Renoir. So we had started with Renoir, mainly late Renoir, and then moved into Fauve Matisse. I liked that juxtaposition because it allowed you to see two parts of their careers that were happening at the same time. And then we move into a section that looks at a time when they were actually in artistic dialogue. When Matisse moved down to Nice, at the end of 1917, he knew that Renoir lived not very far away in Cannes. And so he gained an introduction to Renoir, who was 30 years older than him, who Matisse very much respected as his elder, as a modern master. Matisse had actually been collecting Renoir's work and was already very much influenced by Renoir. He started to visit Renoir at his home, Les Colettes, in his studio, and they began a friendship that was very much a mentorship for Matisse. And it was a time of artistic exchange for about 2 years. Renoir, of course, died in 1919. But Matisse visited him regularly over these 2 years and brought him paintings to critique, studied Renoir's work that was hanging in his studio, including, there you can see in the background is Renoir's Promenade, which is a work in the Barnes collection. So it is in the installation in this room. This room might be my favorite room. I first want to talk about the sight lines, because these are what curators think about. If you stand in the middle of this room, you will see coming up a monumental painting by Matisse called The Music Lesson on one end, and on the other you will see Matisse's Bonheur de Vivre. So you get that bookend of, Fauve Matisse into 1917, Matisse right before he moves down to Nice. But this room of Matisse and Renoir, what I wanted to do was hang monumental paintings by both artists across the walls from each other so they could be in dialogue. On one side of the gallery is Matisse's Three Sisters triptych, which is from 1917, right before he moved down to Nice. And on the other side are these three Renoirs from across his career. We have the Impressionist work through the kind of later work. And what I was really excited to do, I wonder if maybe we should go back to this view. What I was excited to do in hanging these pictures is to hang them rather low so that you get the sense that you are in conversation with them. So not only are the paintings in conversation with each other across the room, but you as the visitor are in conversation with them, because they are basically life-size. And you can feel like you're walking into, from left to right, first you're walking into kind of a Parisian street scene, and then you're walking into a beach in Normandy, and then you're walking into the woods in the south of France. So the exhibition ends with the last room that is built around the music lesson. This monumental painting from 1917 that is a family portrait. This is Matisse's living room in Issy-les-Moulineaux, outside of Paris. You see at the piano his daughter Marguerite, kind of giving a lesson or helping his son Pierre play the piano. In the background is outside, sitting in the garden, crocheting or knitting, is Amélie Matisse. And then sitting there reading and smoking a cigarette on the left is his son Jean. Now, this looks like a really beautiful, lovely, harmonious kind of bourgeois domestic scene. But what's interesting to note is that at this time in 1917, Jean was actually not there. He was off fighting in World War I. So when you have that bit of context, you kind of understand this work as wishful thinking on Matisse's part to reunite his family. But what we wanted to explore with this work throughout the room was actually the window motif. So what we hung in here with the music lesson are works from across Matisse's career from the Nice period through the late 40s, works that explore the window motif in different ways. So the window motif was so important to Matisse throughout his career. It was a way of conflating indoor and outdoor space. It was a way of exploring this idea of the window as a picture within a picture, and therefore exploring the idea of fictive space, of painted space, of real space, and where the sort of conflation is between all of those themes. Here I'm giving you another view. Specifically, these pictures from his Nice period, where he is exploring the window scene, as you can see in these different ways. I'm just checking the time. I think I should.
Oh, you have 6:25. You've got plenty.
I have some time. Okay.
15, 20 minutes, if you like.
Oh, I thought we were gonna.
No, not till 6:45.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? Maybe I will say a little bit more about. I think like the curatorial point of view of installing these works again, because the music lesson is 8 feet by 6 feet, is quite a monumental painting. It is usually hung above furniture in the permanent collection, and with lots of other objects around it. So when we pulled it out onto its own wall, one of the really interesting things that happened is that it grew even bigger. It seemed to grow even bigger. One of the kind of magic points of working with Matisse's work, especially from this period and this kind of work, is that the more space you give it, the more space it takes up. The more space in the room it feels like it takes up. But that is not always the case, and I say that because this work here, the Venetian blinds, was from a period that is much more intimiste in Matisse's work. This work on its own wall, it did not do the same thing that the music lesson did. And it very much is it, and it very much emphasized that this is an interior looking work. Not that it closes in on itself, but it gives you a sense of enclosure, a sense of intimacy, and you want to walk up to it, you want to walk into it to look at it closely. This work was nicknamed by Matisse's friends the cathedral because of the verticality of the composition. I mean, it is a very vertical format, but also the way he has painted the shutters so that this rectilinear kind of expanse and extension of the shutters all the way up to this kind of semicircle lunette give it the sense of, you know, a Gothic cathedral kind of expanse. And then here, Matisse has opened up one of the shutters just to give you a glimpse of the outside. And as when I was talking about his playing with fictive versus real space, one of the ways that this open window functions in the work is to give you a space to question whether this is this a painted landscape? Is this an open window? Is it supposed to look like a picture within a picture? I also just pulled out this work to zoom in on because the paint layers are so kind of transparent and gauzy and thin and washy. It's just incredibly beautiful. And it's beautiful to look at and to see the way Matisse plays with ideas of reflection and transparency in this work. So the latest paintings in the show that we end with are these two works from the same series, from his quote-unquote Vence interiors. They are both from 1947, and this series of works explored kind of similar themes of these two girls sitting in an interior by an open window. Sometimes they're reading, sometimes they're sitting by a table with flowers. And we wanted to look again at the way Matisse develops the window theme in these works. So, of course, there's an open window that looks out onto the garden, onto olive trees in this case. And he has the same effect where it could be an open window, it could be a painting within a painting. And one of the ways that he emphasizes that is, in this painting in particular, the yellow, the ochre color, he extends from the interior, which is clearly, you know, the interior wall, and extends that color all the way to the exterior, so that it's one flat kind of planar expanse, even though we move from inside to outside. So the yellow ochre stands for both the interior wall as well as the outdoors, and it gives you a sense that it's, you know, a sunny afternoon and that there's a lot of light hitting the trees. And I just wanted to give you a view of how that's installed, and the quote that we end the exhibition with to tie it all together, to tie, again, Matisse to Renoir, and give you a sense of how important Renoir was to Matisse and to his development as an avant-garde painter. So one of the things that we hope that this exhibition allows you to see is the importance of Renoir to the next generation of artists. Barnes was particularly interested in late Renoir, so we have a lot of that in the collection. And contemporary taste probably is not inclined to late Renoir anymore, but what we hope that you get from this exhibition is to re-see, I guess, Renoir in the light of how much Matisse learned from him, how important he was as a modern master in kind of influencing and helping to develop avant-garde painting in France in the 20th century. Just wanted to end with this little plug for Barnes membership. But I know that...
I'm going to make you go back, but that's fine. Let's put
yeah,
this out.
I wanted to just give you this quick overview so that we could go back and discuss more with Faya.
Yes, okay. I think what we have time, we have some wonderful questions, but I would like, because we might have had some people coming in late, if you wouldn't mind to take us through the exhibition. We have time. And we also have a sense of your curation because of what you've said. So could we go back to the beginning of your slide presentation and just walk us through the rooms one more time? And just keep in mind that we have some questions just to keep in mind as we go. One of them is, it seems the color blue is in all Matisse's paintings, so keep that in mind as we go back. And a question, could you discuss how and why you, as the curator, chose the simplicity of each room with one exception that appears to a light lavender color? So people are looking at your choice of wall colors. They're looking at your hang. And so if you wouldn't mind doing that, we have 10 minutes or so that just to walk through, and I can ask a couple of questions as we go. And I must say, we all are delighted. It's so rare to have this technology that you can zoom in with a presentation like this. And a question, if you want to, can you please comment on the picture frame? So if you want to start at the beginning again, let's do that.
Sure. I can certainly kind of walk through the structure of the exhibition again. Here, again, you're seeing just the intro wall. You know, I don't have an image. One of the most interesting frames, I actually didn't put an image in there, but that's a great question about frames, because Barnes chose all the frames of the paintings in his collection. He was very particular about, matching, or he was very particular about which French frames should go with which paintings. So he had a very narrow range of French frames that he liked. Louis XVI, and he also commissioned frames from an American artist, from two American artists, actually. So a lot of the frames were made by Charles Prendergast, who is the brother of Maurice Prendergast. And then there's also another artist named Max Cooney, who also made frames for Barnes's paintings. So in terms of the wall color, there are two. There's white, which was essential for creating that sense of airiness, of lightness. We really wanted this exhibition to feel like a breath of fresh air. So the other color that we chose for this exhibition is blue, this kind of lighter blue that actually kind of shades into, is kind of a purpley blue that we chose to really complement the Renoir works in particular. So the blue appears in the Renoir room, as you can see here. And the blue, I think, works both with the few kind of earlier Impressionist works that we do have in the show, where he is using that kind of blue palette, but it also, I really wanted it to set off the late work, which is very warm toned, right? With all of the reds and the corals and the peaches and the pinks and the apricots. We thought a blue wall color would be a nice way to set that off.
One question, Cindy, we have someone who asked a question I think you got asked earlier, and that is, where did Matisse acquire his green and blue paint? And although they were friends and got to know each other late in life, when, as you just said, Renoir's palette became warmer, more autumn-like, the blues of his earlier life. So our question is about Matisse, blue and green, and between the two artists, if you want to answer that. Where did he buy his paints?
That I don't know.
Okay. But the interest in blue throughout both of these artists, that's one of the questions we had.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, you know what? I think I will jump to this slide to think about palette a little. Because I think this work, this is The Domino Players by Matisse from the early 20s. And here you see his daughter Marguerite, again, sitting with a model named Henriette DC. And in this work, I really do feel like Matisse is picking up on Renoir's palette with the pinks and the apricots and the purples. I mean, we wanted to show this work kind of in the vicinity of the muscle fissures here, where you have these apricots and purples and pinks. To show how Renoir, I mean, Matisse, during his Nice period, you can clearly see the way he's picking up on Renoir's palette during his Nice period. But at the same time, he is doing something that is all his own, which is his use of black. So this is something that is, part of what we talk about in the exhibition. Renoir, one of the comments that he made on Matisse's work when he first saw it was that, actually he said to Matisse, "I don't think you're a very good painter, but you can use black in a way that it stays in place." And this was a revelation to Renoir. Renoir used black very rarely. He had kind of let go of black from his palette quite a long time ago. And so he was incredibly impressed by the way Matisse was able to integrate black into such a vivid kind of coloristic palette. And so in this work, you can see the way that Matisse has those kind of Renoir colors, but punctuates it with black in the shoes of the woman, in the mirror behind them. We can also see the way black is kind of part of the syncopated rhythm of the palette across the three sisters, and the way it really, adds a lot of strength to these pictures, and is kind of distinctive to Matisse. Where would you like to go next?
I was just enjoying looking at the pictures. Since we have these Matisse slides on the screen now, and such a rarity to see three together, and I want to point out, and those of you who have seen the exhibition or will visit, but even in this, is what this rarity is to be in a hall of portraits, Renoir on one side and Matisse on the other. So a question the Matisse question has is, Matisse is known for the collages Picasso imitated. Why does this exhibition not display collages? And that we get back to Dr. Barnes and his collecting.
Yes, that is a great question, because we don't have any in the collection. What's really interesting is that Matisse's cutouts really start with the Barnes dance mural. So in 1931 to 32, Matisse was working on a mural for the Barnes Foundation to go in these kind of 3 lunettes in the main gallery. I'm sure a lot of you know this work. I don't have a slide of it here, unfortunately. But it was while working on this massive commission that Matisse developed the technique of the cutouts to allow him to plan the composition and to move kind of sheets of paper around to plan the palette and the colors and the forms of the composition, rather than having to kind of scrape down these huge canvases and with turpentine over and over again, which is an incredibly laborious process. He started using paper cutouts. But despite the fact that the paper cutout technique started with the Barnes dance mural, Barnes was not interested in collecting Matisse's paper cutout work. So we don't have that represented in the collection. So this display is obviously from the collection, so it's very focused on the aspects of the careers of these artists that Barnes admired. Barnes happened to love Matisse's Nice period, which is why we have such a breadth and depth of that work. And then he kind of skipped over, and we can move back to the Vence interiors. Yeah. He kind of skipped over the cutouts and then was buying the paintings again from his latter period. One glimpse of a painting that you get here, I'm sorry I don't have the whole painting in this slideshow, is this work from 1939, which is Figure with Bouquet. And this work, I think very much, you see the effect of cutouts on Matisse's painting, because just, you can see here, the vibrant red rectangle in the background that looks like essentially a cutout shape. I think that the kind of bolder geometric forms that he starts to use in the 30s, as opposed to the much more curvilinear and decorative and even you could say sometimes naturalistic Nice work, there is a shift that happens in the 1930s. So this work, I think, shows the influence of the cutouts on Matisse's painting, and that's kind of what we have in the collection. We included this work in this installation because that bright red kind of rectangular shape in the background can be read as kind of a window with a closed curtain.
Well, your window comment brings us to a question that we have from the public, and that is there a personal reason? Our visitor asks, why Matisse loved painting windows? What's your thought?
I think the window scene has a very long art historical lineage. And you can think of 19th century German Romantic painting was kind of a time when the window scene became incredibly symbolic. In 17th century Dutch painting, there is a whole tradition of the window scene in European art history. And I think Matisse's exploration of that motif was his way of asserting his own practice within the lineage of European art and making his own stamp on this genre, which so many artists had treated. And the way that he treated it was in a much more kind of formal way and playing with the form of the window rather than thinking about the narrative aspects of the window that are, present in 17th century Dutch painting and 19th century painting, where the window is about longing, it's about travel, it's about, other kind of romantic notions.
I would just say that we were so lucky for you to focus on the piano lesson, and it would be great to bring that up one more time, because I think in your presentation you point out that we are in a room looking out a window, and then we are also looking at the wall with a painting on it. It's almost as he does three different things. He paints a landscape, a window, an interior, and another painting. And if it wasn't already called a masterpiece, certainly the music lesson from that summer of 1917 in this exhibition will be ever more so. And it's a square. It's not the special kind of rectangle. It's not short and long. I'm just telling people in our audience, because we had two ways of signing on for this program tonight, we also have two different chat rooms. And so now we are going to go to Yann Lemerdy, who is going to present some of the questions that have come on our other chat site.
Yes, thank you, Faya. I'm just jumping in because we also have interesting questions on Matisse again. And I have one here where the participant is asking, would you mind talking about Barnes' relationship with Matisse?
Sure. Barnes had a friendship with Matisse in the 1930s. So in 1930, Matisse was serving as a judge for the Carnegie International, which is located in Pittsburgh. So he traveled to the U.S. for the first time, I believe, for that. That's that famous trip where he first stops in New York and is just blown away by skyscrapers and is talking about how there's so much energy and that they're glittering like gold. And so then after he stops in New York, he goes on his way to Pittsburgh. He stops in Marion, Pennsylvania. That's where the Barnes Foundation was located at the time. He stops in Marion, Pennsylvania to visit Dr. Barnes because Barnes was, of course, at the time, one of his most important collectors. And he goes to see a lot of his work hanging in the collection in this Barnesian way. And he's actually incredibly delighted. And he comments that, you know, the best place to see pictures, to see modern art in America is the Barnes collection, because Barnes had hung it in this kind of formless way with other paintings from other time periods to show the connection between modern masters and old master painting and other traditions. And so you can see the way that different forms, different palettes were, you know, brought forward through the centuries, even into kind of contemporary art. Now, Barnes, during that visit, commissioned Matisse to create the dance mural. So that was really the beginning of their, I would say, intense relationship. It was a little bit fraught, I think, through the process of commissioning and creating the dance mural. But they came out the other end, you know, still very cordial. And Barnes continued, right, to collect Matisse's work, you know, through the late 40s. Another touch point for them was this Three Sisters triptych, because when Matisse came to visit Barnes, Barnes actually owned two of these Three Sisters. He owned the one on the left and the one on the right, the Three Sisters with African sculpture and the Three Sisters with rose marble table. And these two paintings were hung not on the same wall at the time. They were hung kind of, I think, in the same room, but not on the same wall. And so when Matisse saw those two pictures, he said to Barnes, you know there's a third, and you have to get the third. And the third one is on sale in New York right now at the Valentin Gallery. So Barnes went to, you know, the Valentin Gallery and acquired the third of the Three Sisters, the one in the middle, the Three Sisters with gray background. And Matisse actually dictated the hang of these three together. So we have in the archives a letter that Matisse wrote to Barnes with an illustration of how Barnes needed to hang the three paintings together on one wall.
And finally it was done with this exhibition. There are other questions, but I would like to say again, emphasizing how important this exhibition is at the Barnes, because it is the very first time that this kind of interactions between paintings in the collection has been done. And so as we have time, could you just tell us what the process was like when starting it and how you chose this subject, and a little bit to give us an idea what it's like to be here and be you and the team and with your big team?
Well, you know, there are lots of practical, actually, concerns that go into kind of choosing how you're going to create a project. And I think I alluded to this earlier, but one of the aspects of this project that it had to fulfill was that it had to keep our most iconic pictures from the second floor on view. While the second floor is closed, we're doing maintenance, refinishing the floors. So that very much dictated what we could do, because once you put the joy of the bonheur de vivre in a room, once you put the music lesson in a room, that pretty much determines what you can do with the rest of the room, and the Three Sisters also. And, you know, also thinking about storage issues and budget, we just wanted to make sure that the largest paintings from the second floor were on view in this exhibition. So that did determine a lot of what we were going to do. We also have going on right now a major kind of Picasso research project where we are systematically examining all the Picassos in our collection. And I say this because if you know the second floor of the collection, there are kind of amazing monumental Picassos up there too, but those needed to be reserved for conservation research, so they could not be in this exhibition. Same thing with our Rousseaus. So just to, like, there are actual practical considerations that we have to take into account. But once, you know, those are ticked off, we really, I mean, we wanted to show Matisse and Renoir together. Of course, first of all, because they were two of Barnes's favorite artists. We have such an incredible breadth and depth in our collection. It is easy, I would say, actually, to create a stunning kind of knockout exhibition with those two artists from our collection. But also, they are not often thought of together, even though there was this relationship between them. And even though the way I see them, they are also very much connected as two of the modern masters who continued the coloristic and decorative tradition in French painting. You know, so I had my own kind of academic reason for wanting to pair them, thinking back all the way to, you know, the 17th century of the Rubenistes versus the Poussinistes. That kind of color versus drawing dialogue was still present, you know, within anyone who was studying French painting. So Matisse and Renoir very much saw themselves as part of the coloristic tradition, that they were revitalizing it, they were reinvigorating it, they were pushing, you know, color kind of forward within avant-garde painting. So that is something we also wanted to show with this exhibition.
Thank you. Jan has another question on his...
Yeah, so to go back on more technical aspects of putting together an exhibition, someone is wondering here about how difficult it is sometimes to read captions within art museums. And more specifically, what do you consider in terms of placement, size, colors, fonts, and font size when putting together such an exhibition?
That is a great question. That is very much in collaboration with our editorial and design department. They have guidelines and standards for font size, for contrast between you know, text and background that we follow. But let's go back to this slide. So, for example, with titles and subtitles and section titles, because they are much larger in terms of font size and all of these things, we play more with color. And so with this exhibition, we chose green to complement, you know, the greens in Matisse and Renoir's work. As well as, you know, this is a summer show. I mean, we wanted summery, bright, you know, beautiful, fun colors. And so this green turned out really well. But in terms of the text panels, the text is always black on the white wall, or we always want a huge amount of contrast between the text color and the wall color so that it is legible. So yes, that is something that is, you know, we work collaboratively together to determine.
Well, that's a very important part of the exhibition, that you have this information, and there are, you know, is a guide as well, but so much of it is looking at the works of art, that they're not lost. And in the looking closely, one of your visitors comments that Renoir's paintings are very detailed, and comment is Matisse's are not. And that's one comment. And the other comment is that Barnes and Matisse had a connection, and Matisse and Renoir had a connection. So it's very, in your discussion, to remember that there are two big conversations going on here, Matisse and Renoir, and Dr. Barnes and Matisse.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Barnes, you know, it's actually Barnes is also, you can say Barnes' conversation with Renoir too, in a way, I mean, through the works. Barnes also, he did not know Renoir. You know, Renoir passed away before Barnes could meet him, but Barnes did know Renoir's sons. He was especially friendly with Jean Renoir. So Barnes did have this kind of direct connection to the Renoir family that he cherished. I mean, that's also how he was able to obtain such a great collection.
We have a couple of minutes left, and one of the things we want to emphasize with this series is how important it is for the public to be able to get a sense of not just a building with a marvelous collection, but the people behind it. And that we have evidence here of a team, not only for the production now, this hour that we're together, but the curatorial team, the direction, the funding for exhibitions, and then what happens when you come here. But I do want to emphasize one more time is how much there is on the web, and that this will be, a recording will be available. So please be sure and check through the French Embassy. Jan, do you want to say something about that, how that can be found?
Of course. So if you're not already acquainted with the Villa Albertine website, I encourage you to go there, where you will find the event page for this event and for all our series of museum talks. And each time that a museum talk has taken place, we post a recording there on the Villa Albertine website under our events in Washington DC section. And there is also a playlist of museum talks on the French Embassy in the US YouTube channel. So you'll be able to find it there. And after this event, we'll share the link to the registered participants on Eventbrite, so for you to be able to rewatch or to share with your network.
And Cindy, for the here at the Barnes, if somebody's how do they find it here through the Barnes? By going online as well. So we would we're just coming to the end now, but we want to remind you that you have, for those of you who haven't seen it, the exhibition will be open through September the 8th and Thursday through Monday. So a juicy weekend with Matisse and Renoir at the Barnes. And we want to thank you very much for your attention. And if I may thank the Barnes, thank the French Embassy for the chance to present this, and Cindy for taking us on a new encounter to steal your title of the show. Thank you very much.